This is the Lifestyle Builders Podcast, show 97. Profit First, a simple system to manage your cash.
Are you frustrated by a lack of momentum in your business? Tired of putting in long hours doing what everyone says you should and still not making money? Sounds like you're ready for Lifestyle Builders. We'll help you get back on track, taking action, and seeing results. Head over to joinlifestylebuilders.com today to get started.
All right. I feel like this topic is one that's near and dear to your heart.
Money.
Well, no, more the managing money. And I think this is something that we've talked about this before, like carrying over how you manage your money in your personal life affects how you manage your money in your business. And many of us never really learned how to manage money in our personal lives. Like I do remember I learned a little bit in school. I remember in one of my like early math classes, he made us keep a checkbook transaction thing. Yeah, this was like in 6th grade or something, which I was
double wow.
That's pretty cool. But when it came to actually like managing money, the closest we got to it was the pig and economics class in high school, but we never really dove too deep into it. It was more learning about government and economics.
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the big challenges is that you really don't, like I never took any classes around money. I never learned how to balance a checkbook or any of that stuff. Mm-hmm. And that actually probably led to a lot of our financial issues early on, like getting into debt and, even, looking at like what college you go to and what life's going to look like afterwards. Not really a lot out there.
Well, and I feel like money is one of those awkward subjects as parents like to talk to your kids about. So a lot of parents just don't do it or assume that they'll pick it up. And like, I don't remember conversations about money with my parents.
Same thing with probably death and
sex
and
we'll just pile it in with one of those awkward parental conversations.
Yeah, but to your point, a lot of the like whatever habits you have in your personal life, are going to carry over.
Yeah,
and that's a big struggle we see with a lot of entrepreneurs that we work with is that either they were not good at managing their personal money and now they're not doing it in their business, or they're just so afraid because they don't understand it that they just avoid it altogether. And I'll tell you, if you're trying to run a business and you're not looking or understanding your financials, it's like, trying to run a business with only like with one eye closed or with only seeing like half of the map and you're trying to figure out where to go because you're going to be missing so many pieces. But once you like take the fear out of like business money and financial transactions and all of that, you now get the full map and it makes it so much easier to run your business and make decisions.
Yeah. Well, and I think money is a scary topic. Money is tough to deal with sometimes. A lot of people, myself included, are not fans of the numbers, which obviously money is a numbers game. Mm-hmm. So getting into entrepreneurship, and we've seen it more in the online entrepreneurial space than offline. Offline, you're kind of shoved into it because you have a lot more to deal with. It's harder. It's, what's the word I'm looking for here? The,
like hard cost or?
No, my brain is not
while you're
working.
Thinking, I mean, so I think it is more prevalent online, but even a lot of offline business owners, the reason they're struggling is because they just never look at this. Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about, so today we're talking all about the book and system Profit First. And this is something that when I first read it, I was like, this is like the missing link for a lot of entrepreneurs. Because in the struggle I always had was when I was trying to help people with their finances, there was such this jump or leap they had to make to go from like not knowing anything to now we show them like a profit and loss statement or like a balance sheet and they get so overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. So when I read this the first time, I was like, Mike is a genius because he made this simple step for people that helps everybody. So let's talk about like what the challenges are and why this system was even created. Most businesses are struggling financially. Mm-hmm. Either they don't have enough money to run their business, or if the business is running, the owner is not paying themselves nearly enough. I mean, if you guys have ever watched like a show like The Profit, you'll hear business owners that haven't taken a paycheck in like 3 years, mm-hmm. and they're paying everyone else and they're paying all their business expenses, But at the same time, they're struggling now financially, which isn't the reason that any of us get into business.
Correct.
And the other thing, like I said earlier, is most people don't look at their financial reports. And when you're not understanding, are you making money, losing money? How was this month compared to the last month? How was this month compared to this month last year? When you're not looking at some of those things, you're making decisions with only partial information.
Correct.
And, finally, and this is something Mike talks about in the book, a big part of this is such a small shift, but it's this normal formula that your accountant will use. Like when you look at your financial sheets, is your sales are at the top. So let's say you sell $100,000 and then you remove all your expenses, and then what's left at the bottom, which is why it's called the bottom line, is basically how much profit you made in the business. Now the challenge is if you sell $100,000 and you spend $100,000 in expenses, that means you have zero profit. That whole formula sets it up what Mike calls backwards. So he says, well, instead of taking all the expenses out and hoping for profit, he says, figure out what kind of profit you want to make, and then let's switch the formula. So you say sales minus my built-in profit, and then it forces you to make the expenses fit that.
Correct.
And this is a similar idea that we had been using in our personal finances for years, which is like pay yourself first. I got it from the book, The Automatic Millionaire. And basically what that said was when you get your paycheck, before you pay any of your bills, like put money into savings, put money into retirement, like pay yourself, and then figure out how to live on the rest.
Everything else fits in. Yep.
So what we're going to do today is talk about profit first. We're going to introduce it to you guys, and we're going to walk you through the basics of how to use it, how to get started with this. And obviously you can get a lot more by actually reading the book. But what we find a lot of people struggle with is even when they've read the book, they're not sure on like the action steps and how to actually do it, and some of like the nuances that come up.
Yeah, and if you haven't heard of Profit First, or the guy who wrote it, Mike Michalowicz, he is basically really taking this system and simplifying it so that you can make a profit in your business. Like that's the whole point. That's why we're all in it. We should be making a profit. Otherwise, why are we running the businesses? So pretty much genius concept. And we are going to be bringing Mike onto the show to actually chat with him both about Profit First and his newest book that has just come out called Clockwork. So definitely make sure you listen into that episode as soon as we've had him on the show.
Yeah, and part of what we wanted to do is we're going to have another episode on Clockwork as well. We want to introduce you guys to these systems so that when we have Mike on, we're getting into like the deep stuff, like not like, what is Profit First, blah, blah, blah. You guys are already going to have that. And now we're going to get into some of the big things like one of Mike's, missions is to eradicate entrepreneurial poverty, which is very closely aligned with what we want to do. So we'll be getting into a lot more of that. So we want to get these out of the way for you so you guys have these systems to then build on when we talk to Mike.
Right. So we already talked a little bit about what is Profit First. Sales minus your profit equals the expenses you should be living on. So you're going to pay yourself first. Now, what the Profit First system is a cash flow management system. It gives you control over managing your money. It is not, however, an accounting system. So you will still need to use something to keep track of the books in your business, whether you hire somebody to be your accountant or if you're still getting started, you're doing that yourself.
Yep. So basically, when I talked earlier about that leap that a lot of people had to make from I'm not looking at my money at all to now I got to look at my financial statements, the challenge that a lot of people have is that because they're not looking at their financial statements, the only thing they're looking at is their bank account.
Correct.
And what Mike talks about in the book is when you do this, you look at the bank account, and if there's a bunch of money in it, you're like, all right, things are good. I don't have to worry about it. If there's no money in it, you're like, oh, crap, I got to go make some sales. But the challenge is just looking at that number doesn't tell you like how many transactions are going to come out that day. Is, where is that money going? Am I putting money away for taxes? Because a lot of us get into trouble because we don't do some of those things.
Correct.
So what this is a supplement to your accounting system. So there is like a cash flow statement, which is one of your main financial reports that you should be using. A lot of people aren't. if they're not big into their finances. This will help you manage your cash flow and then should supplement those reports in your accounting system.
Well, I think because you're doing it, because you're taking a hands-on approach to managing your money using Profit First, the leap to looking at those accounting system records, like a cash flows record and like a profit and loss report, the leap isn't quite so large.
Correct.
So you're this is giving you that happy medium in between where it's introducing you to managing your cash flow and getting you more comfortable with it, so that when you talk to your accountant and they throw all these reports at you, you're not completely out of your element and like, I don't know what this means. You kind of can understand those now and get a better feel for, oh, okay, so this is how I've been managing my money. This is now how my business looks from a cash flow standpoint.
Yep. And we've had prior episodes where we talked about your business financials.
We had a
and some of those
whole
statements.
month about money back in May.
Yep. And so we did that. We had one about like bookkeeping and accounting. So we'll put links to those episodes on the show notes page at tomandariana.com/97. But let's actually dive into like some of the key concepts of Profit First.
Yeah. What are the basics? What do they need to know?
Yeah. So the first one is this concept of like buckets of money. And
woohoo, buckets of money. I'll take it.
And from like your from personal finance perspective, this is actually something that like a lot of like our grandparents have done back in the day.
Well, it's Dave Ramsey's system that he uses for personal finance.
Correct. So it's basically when you have a big lump of money, you just see that and you're like, I have a ton of money. Like if I look at my bank account, I have $10,000. I'm like, sweet, I have $10,000. But part of that money is allocated to taxes. Part of that money is allocated to expenses. And so it ends up getting smaller when you start bucketing it out. And so what a lot of people used to do for personal finance was they would take their paycheck and they would put like $100 into an envelope for groceries and $50 into an envelope for gas. And that way they chopped it up and they knew where the money was going.
They knew what their mortgage payment was. They would take out the money for their bills. They would take out the money for their kids' lunches, or like every little thing, everything had its own envelope.
Yep.
So everything was dispersed, and then the account would normally have zero left because you would move into your savings, you would move money into all your envelopes, and then it would be like back at clean slate until your next paycheck came in.
Yep. And so we're going to do the same concept with your business bank account. So Mike introduces a handful of accounts that you'll set up. And so first off, if your business bank account is the same as your personal bank account,
get a new bank account.
You need to get a business bank account. What you're doing is called commingling funds, and it makes everything else more complicated, and you can actually get into trouble.
It's also very much frowned upon by the IRS.
Yeah, so. And it's going to cost you more money because your accountant's going to spend more time. Like, just if you are using the same bank account for personal and business, get a second one. If you have a business bank account, most businesses just have one account, a checking account. Money goes in, money comes out. Sometimes they might have a savings account, but one of the things with Profit First is you're actually going to have multiple bank accounts. Mm-hmm. And this usually throws people off at the beginning,
yes, it does.
But it helps so much. So
just think of them as buckets, not accounts.
Yeah. So the first account you're going to have is what you're going to call an income account. All the money that you make in your business is going to go into this account. And this account's only purpose is to collect all the money. Then you're going to have a profit account. This is going to be where you take profit from the business. Mm-hmm. Then you're going to have what's called an owner's pay or an owner's compensation account, which is where the money goes that you're going to pay yourself.
Basically, because you're working in your business, you should be getting paid.
Yep. So the profit account is for owning the business. The owner's comp is for working in your business. Then you've got an account for your taxes.
Yep.
So you're going to be able to put money aside for there so that when you have to pay your tax bill, you actually have money for it. Not like us with our wine and liquor store. When the first one came due, we didn't have money set aside and we had to pull like $4,000 out of our personal funds to pay the business taxes. Not what you want to do. And then finally, you'll have an operating expenses account. And this is basically what you're going to use to pay all of your bills for the business. Mm-hmm. Now, there's more to it, and Mike has you set up some of these at a second bank. We're not going to get into all that right now, but what we want to focus on is when you have those 5 accounts, now you're going to be able to start allocating money into those so that you've got money for your profit, you've got money for paying yourself, you've got money for your taxes, and you've got money to pay your bills.
Now, you may be listening to this and first of all thinking we're nuts telling you to open 5 accounts at a bank.
We have like 27 accounts.
We have 1 million because we have 3 businesses that are operating off of Profit First. But the next question is, okay, well, how do I know what money to put in what accounts? And this is where Mike introduces the TAP, the Target Allocation Percentage. So he went through and did studies and looked at different types of businesses and different industries and different levels and basically figured out that between certain levels of gross revenue, so the amount of money your business brings in a year, you should be at around these certain percentages of money in each of those accounts. So what's the first one? 0 to 250,000, right?
Yep.
You're looking at, you should be taking 50% of revenue and putting it in your owner's pay or your owner's compensation. Let's see if I can remember. 15% of that should go into income tax, which is a generalized percentage. You're going to need to talk to your accountant and look at the different laws within your state to see if that 15% is going to cover you or if you maybe want to raise that percentage. You're going to take 30% and that goes into your operating expenses. And then 5% is going to go to profit.
So
Did I get all this correctly?
Yes, you did. So high five for that. I just got to call Ariana out though. The podcast and the book is called Profit First, and she put profit last. So
I was just going off of memory for the percentage amounts.
But yeah, so
the smallest one.
So essentially to that point, what you're going to do is you're going to have those different buckets, and Mike gives you targets to kind of know like where this is kind of a healthy business of your size. Correct. And where the money should go. Now, most people say, okay, well, I see those. What he then has you do is do what's called a current allocation percentage. So you'll take like your financial statements or you'll look at where your money has gone historically, and he's got this nice little grid that you'll fill it in. So for example, you said we should be taking 5% profit. Mm-hmm. You might look and say, well, I took 0% profit last year. So you're going to come up with currently what percentage of money is going into each of those accounts. And then what you're going to, and when most people do this, by the way, they want to cry afterwards because
their operating expenses are always way higher.
Yeah, operating expenses are really high. They're not paying themselves enough. But then what you can do is start moving from where you're currently allocating that money closer to the target, and you'll do that ongoing. So once you have that laid out, you have your bank account set up, then what Mike has you do is twice a month, you're going to, well, like every day you're going to collect money into that income account.
Correct.
And then twice a month, you're going to go through and basically take the money from the income account and move it into these other buckets. Then from there, you're going to be able to pay your bills, pay yourself, and then collect your profit and your taxes to keep building up from there. So that's essentially the basics of the system.
Yes.
And what makes this so powerful is that once you get into this routine, you're now consistently putting money into these buckets so that cash is building up, you're paying yourself, and it's forcing you to incrementally improve the financial health of your business.
Yeah, I think he's given people a really solid foundation from which to start. You start at the target allocation percentages. You basically just get started managing your money using Profit First. And then as you grow, you have full and total control over what that looks like. So you have the ability to shift and change, and depending on your business and your industry, you may have more than 5 accounts. You may have other things. And I mean, he dives deeper into what some of those might look like in the book. So you can pick that up and read it if you're really interested in like, oh, well, my business looks like this. What would my accounts look like? But he gives you a solid foundation from which to start. And then as you grow, you, as always, are the owner, and you can kind of shift and adjust things as needed.
Yep. So what we're giving you guys here is the most basic version of this. There's additional accounts that you can create for different purposes depending on the business you have. But we want to give you enough just to get started and not overwhelm you. And then there's always more you can do from there.
Correct.
So to that point, let's actually walk you guys through how do you actually get started with this?
All right. So the first step is going to be kind of stepping back and looking at your business to define what bank accounts you need.
Yep. And if you want to take just the simple version of this, it can be the 5 that we talked about.
Yes.
An income account, a profit account, an owner's compensation account, a tax account, and a operating expense account.
Now, the next step is to find a bank that's going to let you open all those accounts. I know a lot of people struggle because a lot of the bigger banks, they charge you extra for opening other accounts, or they have a minimum amount that has to be in the account. So that's kind of not profit first friendly, because you're obviously going to be moving money between the accounts at certain times. So you're going to always fall below that minimum like twice a month. So the place that we found for the best being profit first friendly was just a local credit union.
Yep.
They didn't charge any extra fees to open extra checking accounts. They don't charge us minimum balance fees when we go below a certain amount. And, the process itself to open the accounts was pretty simple. We were able to go in, tell them exactly what we needed. And then they have a really user-friendly online interface so that we can easily move money between the accounts and see where the money is. So my first thing for you would be to go and look where you live and see if there's any credit unions locally that will work for you.
Well, and starting with whatever bank you're currently at, the first thing I would do is go and talk to your bank and see if you can work there, because we actually had all of our accounts at a different bank, and we went to them and said, hey, we're looking to do this new thing. Can you waive the fees on these additional accounts? And they said no. Yep. Now, had they said yes, this would have been so much easier, because then we could have just stayed with this bank. But yeah, some of the criteria, you want to look for a bank that's not going to charge you fees for the extra accounts, a bank that's not going to charge you fees for not having a minimum. Basically someone that's just friendly for having multiple accounts and moving money between them. Not restricting like how many transactions you can do, that type of thing.
Yep. And I've seen a couple people mention a certain online bank that was sort of profit first friendly. I can't remember what the name of it was now, but it basically allowed you to be able to move money between them and have access online, and you could set up your automatic deposits.
I was going to say, there's a couple different options online. The tough thing here is that depending on like what country you're in, what state you're in, there's all these things. So what you're mostly looking for is, like we said, whether it's online or offline, basically the ability to open multiple accounts and not get charged for it, because otherwise you might be paying an extra $50 a month, which there's no need to. You will find a bank or a credit union. It just might take some looking.
Correct.
Okay.
Next.
So with that, now that you've got your accounts open, you've got to go through and figure out your current allocation percentages. And we won't get too deep into here, but basically you're just going to look at, where is your money going today? So you can take a look at your last month. If you have financial statements or tax returns, you can go back and look at that. But you're going to want to figure out for each of the accounts, how much money are you currently putting there today? Then what you're going to want to do is basically figure out how far off of those are from the target allocation percentage. So for example, let's say you're taking 0 profit today, and your business is under $250,000 a year, so you want to take 5% profit. Well, instantly trying to jump to 5%, is going to be crazy, and you probably can't do that. So what you want to do is you want to move 1 percentage closer. So instead of paying yourself 0%, you want to pay yourself 1%. Now that 1% has to come away from somewhere, which is probably going to come away from your operating expenses.
Yes.
But you want to basically say, I need to pay myself more here. Where do I take it from? And you're going to do that for each of your accounts. And then you're going to know now where you're moving money, right? So it might be moving 1% into your profit. If you're not paying any taxes, you probably want to move some of that into taxes. If you're not paying yourself, you obviously want to start paying yourself. But this will give you a starting point to then know how to move money.
Correct. And I think one of the biggest things too is just having an awareness of what your current finances look like. So doing this, like going through the process to start using Profit First, gives you a really good handle on where you're at right now. And it kind of forces you into looking at how you're currently spending whatever money your business is making, in order to almost give yourself a little bit of a wake-up call and say, oh man, I've been totally just flying by the seat of my pants by, with my money in my business. Now I can take a closer look and be more aware and conscious of how I'm buying new tools, or, how I'm hiring people, or what things I'm spending money on in my business, making sure that those are the right things and your target allocation percentages aren't completely off.
Well, oftentimes when we do this with people, then the next step is to look at their expenses and to see what they can cut. I mean, there's people that have saved several hundred, sometimes several $1,000s a month, just because when they become aware of this, it forces them to reduce their expenses. Mm-hmm. So they start to say, well, what am I not using anymore? What can I cut? And then really the final piece of this is, once you know those percentages, Mike recommends 2 times a month, the 10th and the 25th, to move money. And that way you'll have it in time for any of your bills. We actually do it every other Friday, because we have specific days where we do specific things, and trying to do it the 10th and the 25th, it might fall on like a Thursday or a Tuesday. So we just do it every other Friday. That works for us. But basically figuring out, when are you going to move money? And then you just follow and move the money from your income account into each of those other ones based on what percentages they should be.
Yep. And good example for us, one of our businesses operates a little bit differently. So we've actually chosen to do it every Friday because that's what works better for us right now, introducing Profit First into that business.
Yep. And so one of the things I want to talk about is, I've historically been a lot more comfortable with like business finances, and Ariana got sucked into this world as she did with everything else. So I just want to talk for a little bit about our experiences with implementing this, because what we actually did was we implemented it with one of our businesses.
Yep.
And I basically took the lead, and then we implemented it with our other 2 businesses as time went on. Want to just talk about like some of the experiences when we first did it, like
Sure.
what your concerns were, what like worked really well?
So for the business that Tom's talking about that we implemented it in first was the online business. It made the most sense because it was this online world we had found out about Profit First in, and that business was earlier. It was newer. So it was easier to implement Profit First because we hadn't been years and years and years into managing the money yet. It was like, oh, this is a great system. Let's start using this to manage our money. So when it came to implementing in the other 2 businesses, first our struggle was the bank wouldn't let us use that bank. So we had to go through this whole movement of, we had been at this one bank for probably 9 years, 10 years
for
almost.
A long time. We had all of our accounts with
all
them.
of our accounts were with them for both our real estate business and our wine and liquor store business. So it was this undertaking of, holy crap, we've got to move banks. What does that entail? Moving direct deposits and automatic payments and things like that, making sure that we transitioned over a time period so that as we were moving money and those bills started to come out, like everything made sense. So that was an undertaking in and of itself.
Yep. Hence earlier why we said, if you can just use your existing bank, it's so much easier.
So much easier.
Because it is a pain when you have bills and stuff coming out, and now suddenly that's all got to switch to a different bank and all of that.
Mm-hmm. So the biggest struggle that we had with the 2 offline businesses was jumping into Profit First and figuring out how that was going to work for each of those businesses. So for the real estate business, we ended up adding like a couple different accounts just because of how that runs.
Yeah. So for example, these are where some of the extra accounts will come. So for the real estate business, we have another account for security deposit to allocate those out.
And we separated the mortgages that come out for those properties versus operating expenses, because first of all, we know exactly what the mortgages are. So we know exactly the number that needs to be in that account monthly. And we wanted to have a better bird's eye view of, here's all the money that we spent paying for the mortgages on the properties versus here's what we're putting into operating expenses.
Yep. And then like for the real estate business, we have an extra account for like long-term maintenance. Mm-hmm. So every business is going to have some nuances.
So that one has like 7.
Yeah. So with real estate, for example, a roof might need to be replaced. So when that comes up, it's going to be relatively expensive, and it's going to be different than just your standard monthly expenses. So we have a separate account where we put money in every month so that when a furnace has to be replaced or a roof has to be replaced, it comes from that, not from the regular monthly expenses.
Yep. And then that business is a little bit different with how we take money out, because we don't take owner's pay. We chose to put everything into profit.
Yep.
So yeah, that was a little bit of a new thing to experience there. The hardest one to implement, which is why it was number 3, was the retail wine and liquor store. And I struggled with that a lot because I kept the bills and the money management for that one this whole time. So I have always been responsible for the store, making sure all the bills got paid, distributor payments, like all of that. So when we tried,
there's a lot of different complexities with that business compared to other ones.
Correct. We, being a retail store, we have distributors that we buy our product from. Those distributors are on a net 30 payment, which means when we buy the items, we don't actually pay for them until 30 days later. So all of these complexities of like, oh, well, we first have to know how much we spent in a month to know the next month how much we're going to owe. And then the fact that the money's constantly moving was a struggle. Sales tax. That business, we have to charge sales tax in. So one of the accounts that we made sure to open was a sales tax account, but that also meant that we had to have a really good handle on our money, because if we're pulling sales tax out every week, that money's just sitting in there rather than before it was in the account and we were kind of always cycling through and being able to spend that money instead of putting it aside. Which,
just a quick note, that's what gets a lot of businesses into trouble, because when all that money is in one account, you might spend it without realizing it, and then when it comes due, now you're having to dip into your personal pocket.
Correct. Or you're basically taking all of the money from your bank account just to cover sales tax.
So now you're not paying yourself.
Bills.
Yeah.
So we had to really get into the nuances of what is this going to look like when we implement profit first. And I resisted for a long time because I really was struggling with, okay, how do we make this whole net 30 thing like make sense? And how do we make sure that when we start profit first, we have enough of a buffer in all of these accounts to be able to start this cycle of paying the stuff and like moving the money and all of that. So what we ended up doing was Tom created some really helpful spreadsheets into how the cash flow would be managed. So, okay, we know that when the money comes in, we're going to be putting aside a certain amount for sales tax, and that should technically come out before we're paying any kind of bills. We also know that when we put orders in, we have like our what is it, cost of goods sold. So your COGS, if you want the official term, cost of goods sold should come out before, again, you're splitting that money between your profit, your owner's pay, and your operating expenses. So he put together a spreadsheet to basically help us kind of track all of those items in the different accounts. And then we found a time of year where we had kind of like a surplus of, we didn't owe a lot in invoices because we had already paid them for the month and sales had been really high. So it was like, okay, this is a really good time for us to jump in and split the money in the accounts and start using profit first. So once we did that, it was just a matter of keeping track with the cash flow management spreadsheet, making sure to move the money every Friday and kind of keeping our eye on things. And then we kind of implemented a couple other sheets as well to help us have an overview of how things were going. But now I cannot imagine not using profit first.
I was going to say, you put a post up recently.
I did, actually, a couple, like last week, I think it was, about how profit first has like changed our lives. Because I used to be so stressed out about the money all the time in the online, or not the online, the retail wine and liquor store. Because it was always like, oh my gosh, we had a really big week where we put a huge order in and now I got to worry about when that's going to be due and if we're going to have the money in the account to pay for it. And if that comes at the same time that we owe sales tax, that's two huge things we have to pay for. And like just always being worried and not knowing where the money was coming in and where it was then going was like a constant weight. Mm-hmm. And then having this system in place to have control over our money and where it's going has just been a game changer. So I know it might be weird. I know the concept is awkward and different. I know that it's a tough thing to kind of have to jump into and do, and it might make you uncomfortable for a little while. Do it anyways. It is honestly the best system that we have found to help you manage your money in your business and just make your life a whole hell of a lot easier.
So I just got to thank you for sharing that and being really open and honest, because I made a very intentional choice. I don't know if Ariana realized it, when we made Ariana responsible for the money in the wine and liquor store business. And part of that was to make sure that she understood how a lot of that worked. And so now we can benefit you guys more because both of us understand the financials. And it helps us be aligned on that.
Yep.
But I will tell you, from the other side, she fought this tooth and nail because, and you're not unlike the majority of entrepreneurs where it scares you and it overwhelms you. And I could see that stress on you. And like you said, when you're trying to like manage all that money in your head, things going in, things going out, like it is crazy and chaotic and stressful. And this is where ultimately your financial reports come into play. But also doing profits first with this then makes that so much easier. And I've seen a huge difference in you now. And even I know how much time it used to take you to pay bills.
Oh my God, it takes
compared to
like
now.
20 minutes, if that.
Yeah. Like it's just, you got so much less stress. We've got money in all the accounts, paying everything where it should be, paying ourselves where it should, like just everything is now like solid and simple.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is, I mean, we've incorporated profit first, not only into all of our businesses, but into all of the frameworks that we teach entrepreneurs with.
Yes.
So when we do goal setting, we build profit first in to help you guys figure out like, how much revenue are you targeting to make in, like, let's say the next year, the next 90 days? And then what does that revenue break out to make sure you're paying yourself enough? So
it's actually how we help people find their freedom number.
Correct. Yeah. We had on one of our previous episodes, we talked about the FIRE movement and kind of your freedom number. We actually back into what your revenue should be based on how much you want to pay yourself.
Yep.
And that then helps you figure out the right business, how big that business needs to be. So we've baked this into just about everything that we do and everything that we teach.
Yep. Thanks, Mike. All right. So actions after today. Mine is a really simple one. I just want you to kind of go back through what we talked about. If you're a reader and you want to pick up the book and read it, do so. But I want you to figure out your buckets. So if you were to implement profit first, what buckets would you need?
Mm-hmm. And usually Ariana gives you the simple one, and then I come in with the more complicated. I want you
simplify it even more.
I want you guys to go and actually get your financial statements. So if you have a bookkeeper, they can produce them for you. You're looking, primarily for this for your profit and loss statement. If you don't have a bookkeeper and you're doing it yourself, whatever tool you're using should be able to produce that. And if you have trouble producing this, it's a sign that you need some help. But when you do produce this, it's then going to help, once you have your accounts open, to fill out that current allocation and get you started here.
Yep. For those of you who have no interest whatsoever in reading the book, but want to implement profit first in your business, I invite you to join us in Lifestyle Builders, because we've actually built out an entire action plan all around how to get started and implement profit first in your business. I mean, we take you through how to open all the bank accounts, how to basically go to the bank and make it as easy and smooth as possible, how to do your current target, your current allocation percentages, like figure out what your current business is, how to figure out what your target should be. Tom's created spreadsheets, everything.
Yeah. Templates, spreadsheets, to help you figure out which accounts you need. We
Video walkthroughs. We gave everyone our cash flow management spreadsheet that you created for the retail wine and liquor store, a basic version and also the more complex version.
Yep. So we've got sheets that you can take to your bank to then open these accounts and kind of tell you which accounts you need, that type of thing. The cash flow tracker, the tool that Ariana's talking about, is a game changer.
It is.
It lets you put in what your income is when you go to move. It'll tell you what to move into each account, and then it'll do some double checks to make sure that you're like not overspending and all of that.
Yep.
So whether or not you've read the book, it's still useful. Like when Ariana put that post up, there was a lot of people that had read the book, but were struggling to like implement it, or they had implemented it, but like they were struggling with like moving the money. So we made this action plan, just like every other one, super simple, giving you like the core things for it.
Yeah. So come on over and join us at joinlifestylebuilders.com. We'd love to have you come and implement Profit First with us.
And then from there, we can help you tie that into your goals and everything else to ultimately, have that successful business.
Exactly. And of course, the book for today, we've already talked about it for like the entire episode.
If you couldn't guess, Profit First.
And then this is the old cover version. The new version's like a white cover with a blue circle.
Yep. So what Mike did was he actually put out a second version, and the second version has some updates. It clarifies some things that people were struggling with or had questions with the first version.
Yep.
And then also really just add some like small tweaks that help you.
So you'll see on the show notes page at tomandariana.com/97, we're going to put the link to the updated version for you. So you'll see the image of what it looks like and be able to pick up a copy there if you'd like. All right. Woo! We love Profit First. It's been another great episode with your hosts and lifestyle builders. And thank you guys so much for listening in today.
Absolutely. I want you guys to remember, as always, it's your life, your business, your way. We'll see you next time.
Bye. Hey, we hope you enjoyed this episode. If you know another entrepreneur who may benefit from hearing this show, we would so appreciate you being a good friend and sharing it with them. Are you dreaming of a life of financial freedom and more time to spend with your loved ones? Want to build your business to support that dream? You need Lifestyle Builders, a mentorship program designed to meet you where you are and give you strategic and custom guidance so you can build the business you need for the life you crave. Become a lifestyle builder at joinlifestylebuilders.com. Are you a Lifestyle Builders podcast fan? We'd love to hear from you. Head on over to tomandariana.com/iTunes and leave us a review.